All right, good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, September 9th at 6 p.m. We'll officially call this board meeting to order. And for our roll call today, maybe we can start at this end of the table.
Aiden Halleck, Senior Student Representative.
Kate Keller, Director, District 2.
Troy Simpson, Director, District 3.
Carly Hoover, Director, District 1.
Dr. Constance Pedrosa, Superintendent.
Director Proctor, District 4.
Dave Larson, Director, District 5.
Thank you very much. Welcome to all of our guests joining both in person and online. I'm really glad that you are here. So we'll move to our labor and land acknowledgement, and I'll be reading that this evening for us. We in the Tukwila School District acknowledge that the land where we teach, collaborate, learn, and play is the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish and Muckleshoot tribes. As a public school district, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of this land, and we strive to work alongside the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people who have been living and working here since time immemorial. And our labor acknowledgement. We further acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. We remember that Black and brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. We also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States. As a school district leadership, we pledge to recognize and work against systems that have historically and currently enforced and create inequities among the people that we serve. Now, for those who would like, you're invited to stand as we speak. My pleasure.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we'll just briefly review our Tukwila School Board values and group agreements. These were a set of kind of values that we identified as board members. Both we took our individual values, we had some discussion, and then really came together to say these are what we value as a board unit. So I'll just kind of read the headline here. So we value and lean into transparency, courage, righteousness, curiosity, and respect, particularly centering humanity. So we strive through all of our conversations, interactions, both here at the board meeting and in our interactions just throughout our in the district and the community to really live by these values. Okay, so next, if I could get a motion to approve the agenda. So,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So next is our first opportunity for public comments. There are multiple ways to provide public comment. The first is here in person. If you are joining online and would like to offer some public comment, you can do so by raising your virtual hand. Or typing your name in the chat. It is a virtual hand.
I
If you can use your real hand, we can't see you, that wouldn't help very much. You can do both, whatever. Anyway, we have a few in-person public comments, so we'll start here with Greg Shaw.
Well, good evening, Board of Directors. Thank you for letting me speak before you. I greatly appreciate it. I remember last time I spoke before you, I talked about my first grade teacher, Mrs. Rhodes, reminding everybody when I was growing up that you listen twice as much as you talk. And so I'll try and be brief. I did just want to fill you in on the results of the council meeting last night. They had a special meeting about hot shops in Tukwila. I've had the misfortune to have to tell you about this now for the last two meetings. Unfortunately, I have to report to you that it passed at the city of Tukwila. The majority of the council voted to increase the zoning areas for hot shops in Tukwila. I can't tell you what disappointment went through me when that vote went through. being born and raised in this area, literally my family home is within walking distance of where we're at right now. To see how drugs and the misuse of them, the so-called legal use of them, what it has done to this area and this community, particularly some people groups, especially those that maybe come from a lower income background. It's tragic. Very, very disappointed. The council members that voted for pot shops, I'd just like you to know who they are. First one was Armin Popyan, Hannah Hendrick, Verna Seal, and unfortunately, our newest council member, Joe Camacho. So with that, as I said, I'm very, very disappointed about that. There was excellent arguments against not allowing the expansion of pot shop zoning, but it was not listened to. The arguments for expanding pot shop zoning was, I thought was poor, very, very poorly said. And with that, I just would like to also add very quickly that, again, last night there was two, either they were pot shop owners, people who own the licenses or who are part of that industry who want to and made the suggestion to expand the pot shop zoning beyond what the council approved last night. They want to see it go to other zoning, which means that in the future, Tuckwell will probably be looking at expanding that zoning to other areas of the city as well. So again, I bring this before you as an item of concern, and as I said, I don't think it's a positive thing whatsoever. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have our Popyan. Were you public comment or you just?
Sure.
Great.
Hey everyone, my name is Ara Papian. I think I'll just maybe, I wasn't there at the council meeting. I'll just reiterate Greg Sherlock's point regarding about the council's decision. Personally, growing up here in school as well, I've seen, I've never touched an ounce of weed, never smoked, never seen, touched an ounce of pot to benefit, but I don't think that the argument that Greg is presenting is fair. There were very much a lot of testimonials at the council meeting. I watched the video, I wasn't there present, but to reiterate some of the school residents, they stated the many use that of the benefits that they have as for medicinal purposes. There's, for example, Hannah Hendrick raised even a concern to the sheriff and asked about this, how do you feel about the safety? And they felt neutral about it. So it's not like it's not thought out plan. The zoning for sure is something that's going to be very protective of making sure like our students are not going to be able to possess this. I mean, they have to be able to check IDs. I think the vendors explained it pretty well and clearly. Again, I'm not benefiting from this, but I think, if we're talking about making sure people are using these substances in a legal setting, it's much safer to do so than when you can go and buy from people you don't know, from a car, from a van you never met. This is definitely a personal issue of, friends that I've had in this school district who face. So I think for sure it's something that, we would want to see some governance as far as making sure that it is a legitimate business and there are safety precautions necessary for this. And for that reason, I just want to state the vote of confidence from the council, why I don't necessarily think the argument that Greg presented is totally fair. Thank you.
Chance to.
So, excuse me. I think one of the things I just want to acknowledge, first off, thank you both for sharing, and I know that you've shared some of these things at previous meetings. And I do, while there is obviously always a connection to things that happen in our city, and the impact that it has on the district, there are state and federal regulations around districting close to school districts. So when we think about the impact that that voting has on the district itself, it really is not district business. And so I want to make sure that we are using public comment time to, of course, bring awareness, right? But more importantly, to provide input and support and guidance and questions and feedback about district business, rather than the city council and the decisions that they make. There's a time and a place to provide that public comment around those decisions. We are not here to argue, to justify, to agree with or not agree with decisions that are made by the city council. I know that in their individual capacity, some board members have gone and spoken again in their individual capacity as citizens of Tukwila in hopes of influencing that vote. But as board members, that is not what we are here to talk about and is not within our jurisdiction. I think I just want to also just be thoughtful, and this is me really trying to be brave and leave it to our values of courage. We're committed to really being a district that does our best to not stereotype and marginalize and generalize against communities. And so I want to be really mindful that when we talk about people that might use marijuana, that we are not generalizing based on a particular race or income class, because lots of people use it, regardless of race, regardless of income, regardless of ability, regardless of whatever. And so I just really want to be mindful that when we are talking about that we are not playing into racist tropes and stereotypes and false mindsets around who uses drugs and who does not. So I just felt like I had to say that. I think it was particularly, as I was reading the labor acknowledgement just now, actually, I was sitting here thinking, and I realize I'm using my point of privilege here. Just the irony, right, of the words that we're speaking and the time that we are in right now. And the weight of that. And every time I read those words, it hits me. And I hope it is doing the same for everyone else who hears those words as well. I'm not good with unscripted things, so I just felt like I had to share a little bit about what was coming up for me.
I'd like to comment briefly. I think it is our business to be mindful of whatever trends that will impact our youth on their way to and from school and while at school. And I think the state laws do a great job of protecting how far away these things can be located. I think the council did a great job of moving it off of TIV, which was not an attractive place for it to be. The only area that I remain aware or interested in is bus routes. And I think we should study where any new areas are. I don't know that there's any evidence that a bus route or a bus stop near one of these locations is a plus or a minus. But I think it would be really good for us to take a look, be mindful, and with the eye of protecting our youth no matter what.
Sure, I think that is a relevant point, right? And something that we can look into. I do think that I want to, and still be mindful of not making something out of nothing, right?
Exactly.
So, I think you just, pointed to it. Is there any data or things to justify even our raising of concern? Yeah, Dr. Proctor.
If I may, in keeping with making sure conversation stays stored to school district business. I was involved in several discussions years ago in the Seattle area. And the premise was that they would regulate how far it is close to schools and X amount of percentage of the revenue would go to education. And yet, when I was still teaching at Franklin, there were pot shops all around the school, and just about every district is in major deficit. So however they pass it, I think it will be incumbent upon the school board to make it our business to enforce where it's gonna be to the schools. And you talked about research. The research shows it, and one of the reasons that it is a gross revenue creator. Where's the cut that went to education? Just about every district in the state is in deficit. And I think that would be incumbent to be our business.
Okay.
And, just to, you know, kids, whether they open the pots out or not, kids can get to marijuana. They didn't need that, us for that, but I do think it will be our business. If they legislate, working with the state, county, and whoever else, the distance, the enforcement, and where's our cut? If you're gonna sell us out, we ought to have a cut. And I was in those discussions to win that thing approved. And you tell me why majority of our districts in deficit and the weed money's going up. So I think we need to keep that on our radar. We were talking outside of this conversation, we were talking about other revenue generating.
Mhm.
Well, if y'all wanna pass that, I think we need to make it on our purview to make that concrete, not just abstract political gerrymandering to get support.
Perhaps we could, for a future meeting, see, Director Larson, if you might have any insight for a future meeting on where that money is.
Yeah,
I think that's again, valid, and really important for you. So yeah.
actually, I was gonna talk about this under board
Great.
business, but
Great.
it's happening now.
Let's transition to our board business then and make it real. Any additional public comment, online? All right, so we will now move to our board business, discussion. So, Sir Coach.
So, actually, just to get to the bottom line, what I was gonna suggest is that we have a work session around this issue, just to educate everybody. So I did go to the meeting last night, and you know, as was indicated, it's controversial. I mean, it was 4-3, so it was right down to the last vote. I will say my concern around this issue is the closeness to the bus stops and the bus routes. And it took me a while because the first version of the map that they had for where the shops were gonna be was almost impossible to figure out where they were gonna be allowed and not allowed. I pushed back on them and they came out with a second version, which is a much clearer, most of the area that they are allowed in is the way south of South Center, which I wasn't too concerned about, although, you know, I know the Renton School District sends a bus over there, so I would be willing to bet Renton had no idea what was going on. The area that I was most concerned is there's a little tiny slice, and if you look at the map, it's really hard to see, but there's a little tiny slice along South Center Boulevard, which is, you know, kind of, if you think of where I-5 intersects 518, it's in that little area there. And we do have bus routes and bus stops in that area, and it's also, you know, close to residential areas. That's kind of the exception. They did, I thought, a pretty decent job of keeping it out of, you know, it's nowhere near Tuckahoe International Boulevard, which I wasn't clear about initially, but it is off there and all those areas north. But that one little slice, I'm concerned about that one particular area being close to bus stops and how that's going to work. I mean, we don't know where a shop might pop up or not. It's just available in that area. So we'll see. Now, as to the money situation, the way the ordinance is written, the city's going to get all the money, basically, from the you know, taxes and so forth. And there is some time that they were estimating, you know, a couple $100,000 a year. There's controversy. Some people don't think I think that's overly generous, or I mean, too high an estimate. And you know, probably won't know until we see something happens. The other dynamic that kind of didn't come up at the meeting last night was
an interesting dynamic about if a cannabis shop goes into an area, you know, what other businesses may or may not want to be there. I mean, there was a lot of people, all, obviously the folks from the cannabis industry and so forth were there in force and saying the benefits of it, the businesses it would bring and so forth. But, you know, in Tahoe, we've seen, for example, down where the casinos are, there was a, you know, what's called a swingers club that moved into that office area. The Chamber of Commerce that was down there immediately moved out because they didn't want to be associated with that. So, you know, that's another whole interesting dynamic to this. But I just feel like for me, it's the connection to the bus routes and who's, there was a comment made that, you know, well, school district is responsible for keeping bus routes and bus stops away from these shops. So, you know, I would disagree with that a little bit. It needs to be a collaboration, I think, for sure. And like the city did some of it, but in their process, to my knowledge, some people were praising their process, but to my knowledge, nobody ever reached out to the school district during the development of this. It's been going on for a while. And so I think they missed some opportunities to outreach. So I just think it would be helpful. I mean, personally, I would like to see, you know, a letter of concern, but that's, you know, that's just me speaking. But I think it would be worthwhile to get just a look at what the ordinance actually is and what the implications are. So everybody's kind of on the same page with that, so we understand it. And then we can, you know, I don't know where everybody stands on this, but then we can decide whether, you know, as a district or as a board, we want to move or not. But so that's my own suggestion, is maybe at the next work session, we have a little thing to talk about it, because that's, yeah, I'm not at all, there was a lot of discussion about, you know, people being benefited by medical marijuana. I have no problem with any of that. My only issue and how it connects to the school district is related to the location of the bus stops and where, and the exposure of the students to that. That's, you know, I mean, different people have different views on marijuana in general, but that's my only issue and connection to the school district, so.
To Pastor Proctor's, sorry, Director Proctor's comments. Last time I checked, it was like either 2/3 or 75% goes to the state. And we get, the city gets a very small amount of money. And that's why it's always been controversial whether they would step into it or not. But I agree with you. I think it's time to talk to our representatives and say, you know, if there are impacts to us, then what are you doing to help us financially?
And it is, so just to be clear, it's state law that these shops can't be located in like 1,000 feet, which is like 2/10 of a mile from a school or a playground. It's the state law is silent on bus routes and bus stops.
Right.
And to me, when students and families are congregating at a bus stop, that's equally important. The state probably didn't go there because it's a little trickier. Bus stops can be a little fluid.
Yeah.
However, I talked to Susie Kelly, our transportation director, and our bus stops are really not fluid just because of the nature of this particular district. I can see statewide, they probably didn't want to go there because other districts would be wildly fluctuating depending on where development goes. But anyway, yeah.
So that's something if we could add that to our board business.
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll get that on
Yeah.
a future work session for sure.
So is there a motion to put that on as a topic for
I'll make that,
October
I'll make that
board work
motion.
session?
Great.
Yeah, I'll second.
Do we have to?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor to approve that motion?
All right.
Great. Perfect. All right, any additional items of discussion, either something that's on our board business doc or something that needs to be added to our board business doc?
I think it's packed.
It is packed. I feel like we've made progress though, so that feels good.
Good.
It's a good process, so we've not had this in the past, so it gets things actually on the list and done, so it's good.
Plan the work and work with them.
That's right. Great. All right, well, if there's nothing else there, we just have a kind of a regular check-in, a quarterly check-in on our goals. And let's see, I think actually most of the items have been, like the due dates and the completion dates have come and gone. There were a few around the community engagement piece, that admittedly, I think we did not, as a board, fully flesh out, to really get us into an actionable, goal. That said, I really do feel that there are a lot of ways in which we have increased, opportunities for community connection and engagement. Be that a little bit maybe more informal than I think we might have liked, but, generally, I think we're on the right track with the policy for the fiscal oversight. Yeah, on the right track. Anything, folks want to bring attention to any of these goals or items?
No, I think individually, I think we've been doing things. I think we did some online town halls and things. I think we have, the momentum has gone more in the direction of accomplishing these goals as opposed to stepping.
We have them, so yeah, that's great, yeah.
We've been doing our bit.
Thanks. All right, so we'll work on, when we do our board self-assessment, this year, is when we'll do the drafting of new goals, hopefully, as well as like some new, board values and, working agreements. All right, next up for our discussion is the, updates to the policy and procedure number 3245. This is about the telecommunication devices. So this was based off of the conversation that we had both at the initial, when we initially approved the policy, kind of that lengthy discussion that we had prior to approval, and some of the additional comments that came up in last meeting around the procedure. So the big edits were highlighted. There were really only two. One was making really clear that not just any teacher could confiscate and look through a student's phone, that it would be the principal or the principal designee, and there would be some strict guidance again around when that happened. And then the other piece was being just clearing up the language around who's responsible for a device based on the possession that it's in if something were to get damaged or stolen. So any additional like questions, comments, discussion that we'd like to have? First off, thank you for making those adjustments. Thank you, team, for doing that. I know that that makes me feel a little bit better, and some folks in the community feel a little bit better as well about what that policy, how that policy reads and has the potential to get implemented. So this will be up for, we're approving the policy later on in this meeting. So now's the time if you have any kind of additional thoughts. Aiden, I'm definitely curious, kind of if you have anything based on the conversation that we had, and now that the school started again, and in theory, this is maybe playing out a little bit. Even though I don't know if it's been fully rolled out, kind of how it's sitting with folks.
I think it's going better than I thought it would. I think it's going better than a lot of teachers thought it would. From what I've seen in all my classes, it's for the most part being respected. Most people, when they're told the first time, please put it away, please put it in the cubby, they do so. And there's not really any fight or anything about it. Some students seem frustrated with it, but most students seem to be adapting well, and it's going well. These changes that are being proposed, I like and endorse them. Please vote yes.
Love it.
I'd love to maybe see us do maybe a mid-year check-in, whether that's through the superintendent advisory committee, doing some listening sessions or doing a pulse check with students, just to say, 'cause what I'd really love to hear is not just like if it's hard to implement or like hard for, but like if there are any benefits that folks are seeing, whether that be a staff, teachers, but definitely students. I know kind of it was really anecdotal and small, but last year when I was visiting one of the civics classes who had kind of were across their department kind of implementing that, we heard from students that like they didn't think they would like it, but they're seeing the benefits because they're less distracted. So I'd really definitely love to hear a kind of mid-year check and
yeah, one
seeing
thing,
the feel is.
one kind of funny thing that's happened with it is sometimes I forget I have a phone. And I'll almost leave it in the classroom. I'm like, oh, wait, I need to grab my phone. Oh, no, I wanna know, I've checked with some teachers. I wanna know how Mr. Camacho feels about it.
On the spot.
Mr. Councilman,
It's been, really great. Yeah, I think today was like the 5th day of school.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's really early.
And I know in my class, there was some pretty strong language from our principal around like directing teachers to start, yesterday, which was Monday, right? Which is when I started. And the students came in knowing what they need to do. A couple of reminders and they put it up and we're all good. We've been talking a lot about like interacting with one another and I've seen students actively participate in that. So I'd say it's been really successful.
Talking face to face.
Yeah.
It's hard. That's great. That's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, a lot more interaction. Classes are, when you put your phone away, people talk. And they talk a lot more than they used to. It's nice. I like it. I think it's going very well.
Anything from the board?
No, I had a city council member mention it last night and got a round of applause, which is not normal in a council. So apparently the adult groups are really supportive. And I was helping greeting at some of the schools on the first day. And the students were being reminded as they came into school, they're all really cooperative. Well, I'm hoping that this will have beyond an educational connection, a social connection that we might have lost during COVID.
I think it's consistent with what you read about many other school districts that have done this.
Yep.
There's the initial, and then, oh yeah, we really like it.
I will just share at the middle school, it was really fun during lunchtime. I was wondering what they were gonna do. Guess what? I got to do karaoke during lunch. It was so cool. Yeah, they have karaoke at lunch as one of the activities. It made my day.
Fun.
I know, and imagine, right? We probably would have thought about that before, but definitely something. So anyway.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all so much. And again, thanks to the team for taking us kind of a second pass and adjusting some of that. All right. So next we're going to move to our one presentation this evening, which is looking at our staffing report, focused and centered on our secondary recent schools. So just to turn it off.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aaron Giordano, HR Labor Relations and Tech. Good to be here this evening. So what we are bringing forward this evening is a report that includes perception information through exit interviews, some information on the district's on the our goals for maintaining staff diversity, monitoring turnover of staff, seniority of staff, particularly our BIPOC staff members. And then we are also looking at some anti-racist goals that we've gotten curious about in the HR department this year. If we can move to slide 7. So I'll set up some context here. So throughout the year, there are resignations, and then we tend to receive more resignations or retirements near the end of the school year. And we invite our staff members who are separating from the district to sit for what's called an exit interview. And at that exit interview, there are a series of 6 questions that the HR team members will ask. And so we had very participation from the school district this year. There were some locations that had more separations than others. Just to highlight from here is that Thorndike actually had the lowest number of separations across the district with just 2 this year. Whereas one of our locations had more than 10. So, and that happens throughout the years. The questions that we ask are these 6 questions, and the last question is more of an open-ended prompt. You know, what else do you want us to do? And what we've done with this presentation is we're not presenting word for word, we're taking like the big ideas from the staff members and capturing that here. One of the things that we think about throughout this entire process is that these are perspectives, these are important perspectives. But what we're listening for at the end, when we put this together, is like, what are the patterns? What are the trends that sort of rise to the top? And so I think the best way to take you through this presentation would be to just share some of those highlights from each of the prompts that we've asked in this process. So prompt 1, which is, you know, what's your story? Why did you choose to work in Tukwila? And this is actually the prompt that gets like the most excitement from the people. They're actually really excited to kind of revisit what it was that ignited their interest in working in Tukwila. And so the range is anywhere from, I was a student teacher, I was an intern in Tukwila, and I fell in love with the scholars, fell in love with the school culture. You know, that came up. I worked in another district, but I heard great things about Tukwila and I got excited about it. So I applied and I got a job. My children attend the district and, you know, I want to work here. I want, you know, a schedule that matches, things like that. And so those were, you know, the highlights this year for sure. You know, another one that stands out is, you know, I've worked in other districts, and I have a MLL endorsement, and this is a place where I can really utilize it. And so, you know, I applied, I got the job, and I worked it. Then we move into, you know, what did you enjoy most about your time working in the district in any of the positions that you were in? And again, we're listening for, you know, what are those patterns? What are those trends? Scholars always comes, you know, rises to the top. You know, the staff members like to share stories about what it was that, about our scholars that they enjoyed. They also liked, especially this year, the connections they made in their schools, working in their grade level teams, working in their department teams. There were a couple shout outs to schools in particular that, you know, we wanted to make sure was reflected in here. And then also the families that they've met through conferences, you know, that came up this year as well. You know, someone had said there were lots of positives, that there were staff members that took me under their wing, helped me get to know some of the systems and structures that weren't easy to navigate by. Then we move into, what were some of the challenges that you experienced while you spent your time in Tukwila? Again, listening for the trends. You know, communication within the locations tends to be a challenge. People not feeling like they're connected to what's happening at their location is something that came up. Budget was also something that was mentioned. The impact of the budget specifically on class sizes. We know that staff members had, you know, 35, close to 40 students in some sections this year, particularly at the high school. And that was challenging, that was difficult. There was, you know, people noticing the turnover, particularly in leadership positions, played a role in people's decision this year to say, hey, this was really tough. And then just feeling like that's, you know, constant change. And then another thing that emerged was just and integrating the ideas, the different, the vision that we have at Tukwila, feeling like things were changing, the direction was changing, not feeling that it's stable from year to year or consistent from year to year. Right after that, we asked, what improvements can be made? And I think what comes to the top of people's minds this year was do something about the turnover. Why, get curious about why people are leaving the district, which is actually this process, and create a plan, respond to that, but actually do something about it. It's great that you're listening. It's great that you're taking the time to hear the story, but what's going to happen next? And yeah, so get a handle on the turnover. And then something else that comes up is, people not feeling like they're part of a team, and that they don't have a relationship with the people that they work with or the people that they report to, is something that people wish could be improved. But I think those are the highlights from that area. And then we move into why. Okay, what is it why are you leaving the district? Where are you going? And of course, we hear, I'm retiring, it's time. We heard that this year from all across the different areas, different positions in the district. People also feeling like it's, I've been on leave, and that is having a challenge, it's difficult to kind of balance my health needs or my family's health needs with my important role in the district. And so people are leaving because of that. We did hear that there were some program challenges this year with delivering services to students, that people felt like that it was too much. And they didn't have the support that they needed. That came up. And so that compelled them to leave as well.
Yeah.
Also, commuting to Tukwila is not, we've heard that, and we know that real estate in Tukwila is not inexpensive. And people are living, further south, perhaps further north, further east. And so getting into Tukwila is not accessible for a lot of people. And so they're finding employment closer to. The sixth prompt that we asked is there anything else that you want us to know? And, we hear anything from, you've asked everything, and I've said it to, this year we had, some very specific responses. I've been a parent, I've been a staff member in the district, and, this one employee said, I've seen great things happen. I've seen, areas where the district has shined, but you need to get, it's about relationships with scholars. That goes a long way. So just a reminder that how vital the relationship piece is, people wanting to feel welcome and included in the district. And then some repeats here. I have a health condition. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question that I'm assuming I know the answer to is because it says interview, but you do this in face-to-face?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes we give educators the option of meeting virtually, but 99% of the time they want to meet in person. So.
Do you think that, I mean, I always think that like a face-to-face or virtual, like somewhere where you can like see that is gonna be best in a setting like this, but do you think that we would get more responses if we have like an exit survey option also?
That we've talked about that, and I think one of the concerns we had is that maybe, but we haven't tried it. I guess one of the ideas we had is that maybe people wouldn't respond, because we've given the option of responding and writing to these questions, and the participation level is really low.
Okay.
That people aren't interested in writing responses.
So if they're not gonna,
yeah,
what you're finding is if they're not willing to have a conversation, they're not taking the other opportunity either, so. Putting it in the form of a survey wouldn't make much of a difference.
yeah,
Probably. Yeah.
that's sort of where we landed on that, but of course, we're open to improving that. So then we move into, we've narrowed it down to 3 like big reflections, and that's on this next slide here. So we noticed, and we talked about this just a moment ago, but the need for, relationships, being connected to their colleagues, to the people that they're supporting. And so we have some ideas for some strategy steps. Conducting a review of what are the top 3 practices that are working at each site, because we know things are working at the schools. We know that principals are doing great things right now to build teams. We know that departments within the central office, transportation are also doing great things. They've done awesome work this August. But what are those, like those best practices around that area? And then let's share those out with the district, with other leaders. But that isn't something that's been done yet. So we'd like to do that, and we set a goal to complete that by October 31st, get that organized. We also want to do check-ins with the principals and the department leads about what supports are needed to strengthen those relationships, sort of building off of this idea. And we've given ourselves until January 31st to do that this year. The next data reflection based on this year's responses was, the staff in the schools want to see district leaders, department leaders, be more visible in schools, in the classrooms. We know that in the teaching and learning department, there are what we call instructional rounds or walkthroughs. And so I think it would be great if we can pick up on that with all departments. Let's get transportation, let's get food service, let's get HR, not just the leader, but the team from each of those departments to be part of this process. And so having a school visit schedule of some sort, and we think that we can get that organized by November 30th.
Can I ask you a question about that? So we did the instructional rounds this past year. The year before, we did not, correct? And then this is probably more for you, Director Wilkerson. Do you remember when the last time we were doing those scheduled instructional rounds in schools prior to this past year?
I don't think that really ever went on. So what we traded, we used to go have a board meeting in every school every year, and that's where we heard about what was out, and then so that got traded for instructional rounds this year. So I don't think, I can't remember outside of, a formal structure. Individuals have been in classrooms and I've been in lots of classrooms, but in terms of the formal structure, I don't think that's happened
And
anymore.
we're planning to do all 5 schools this year too.
I think the reason why I bring that up is I think that's just evidence of some of these things have kind of started, the remnants of those have started. I think it's just being more, going into the year, right? Because they started kind of mid-year and, so anyway, I just kind of wanted to highlight the fact that, I think these are things that the team has already prior to this recognized as some gaps. And we're starting to build systems around figuring out how to support them.
Yeah, I think one of the positive impacts of a strategy like this is that, staff have said, several months into the year, I just met so-and-so, I've only emailed with them. Even in a district our size, it's actually kind of surprising to hear that. But that's people's experience in Tukwila, that they haven't seen, so-and-so from HR or so-and-so from accounting. And we want to change that.
Yeah.
And we think we can.
I like the team-based approach to that. Yeah, it's awesome. Bring the team, not just the department leader.
Yes, yeah. And then next up is we have this idea of, because we know that people are reading the weekly bulletin because we get, feedback from people about the weekly bulletin, the communications issues. And so we have a very busy HR section in the bulletin, and we want to add, we think like a policy study, like a policy of the week, just for visibility on what the policies are, but a condensed version of the policy that's accessible for people when they're reading something at a glance like that. And so we have some ideas on that, but we think that we know what the top policies are that people need to know this year. And we'd like to, use that, implement that.
Just one thought, I think on the strategy, the first strategy step, around relationships. So of course, practice sharing is great. And so I don't want to like take you away, just kind of like offer that, the practices that work for building and impacting positive relationships are gonna be different based on not even just the school community, but the individuals that are involved. And so it's great to, yes, have some opportunity to really identify what are those best practices that we know kind of universally can support the building of relationships, but also, you know, I wonder if, what would it look like to even kind of go more broad and say, and just kind of build more awareness around the muscle of, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know, just, it's not as cut and dry as this practice works here, it's gonna work here. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. So, I'm being okay with that and highlighting that when we're talking about this practice sharing idea, which is great.
Well, and we talked about this too, and what we were thinking was if there's like a menu, I think one person had thrown that out, like if there's a menu of just, if these practices are working in schools, you know, these could be some options, but you're right, that it's not a one size fits all approach. You know, this may work at Showalter and this may work at Cascade View.
So-
Based on the needs.
Briefly, you know, you can't do a one size fits all, I agree.
Yeah,
And I know this is gonna be strange crosswalk, but learned in doing project management and program management at many public agencies that when we start to do stuff for the public, it's amazing how much we decide maybe a person who's homeless needs a coat or a suit to do an interview or certain kinds of food. But often if you pause and just take the time to speak to them, I don't mean a survey, just in passing, maybe they have a regular team building meeting, you can attend for 15 minutes and leave. And say, what do you think would be helpful? A lot of people already know the remedy. They just need some time carved out to talk to each other. Or, you know, they make fun of it at work a lot. You know, if there's a manager who comes in with almost like, you know, social games at the beginning. But if you were to ask faculty or staff to say, what do I most admire about my coworker? To start a conversation, they call them icebreakers and things like that. It warms it up, but don't do it to them. Ask them if they prefer to do it as a group, right? Give them the opportunity to decide. And the only second piece here is, I'm worried, because I used to work at a television station and all the managers went off to some management course. And back in the day, it wasn't bad to, pardon me, Charlie, do this. And they found out psychologically people respond better if you touch them, their hand, or, you know, connect physically. But in current times, that would be deemed horrible, right? Because all kinds of thoughts. But what I do remember distinctly is every manager in every department at the TV station I worked at, I was at the control room, so I'm the one putting all the programs and ads up. They all came through with their hand on my shoulder, or touched my hand, or said, boy, your hair looks great today, and touched my hair. About the fourth one,
You're okay until you got to the
about the
compliment right
fourth
here.
one, I'm
That's
like,
great.
what the heck is going on? So I actually don't think the rounds is the way to do it. They feel like they're on trial. They're happy to show off their capabilities, but I think it puts them to the test. But just to come and observe without trying to score them and appreciate what's going on and then ask where they need help. Now that would make more sense to me. I don't think the rounds are horrible. I just don't think that's the answer to some of these comments in the exit. No, I'm done.
thank you.
Sorry about the hair comment.
No, it's more just like.
They were doing it. It's back when that wasn't considered uncool and it was really uncool.
I mean, who took the hair with
It's always uncool.
But you know, the hand on the shoulder, that I can understand, right? There is something about connection that is just, yeah.
But I think it goes back to, there's no cookie cutter. You think as an engineer,
Correct.
and in executive training, you learn this, but you also gotta read the room. You also gotta be invited in people's personal space and be.
Yes.
And then there's a wisdom that comes with
That's right.
acknowledging that or inviting that or recognizing that there's a barrier and honoring that and not, but that's just wisdom. And But thank you, Kate.
Great.
Next, thank you. So as I said, this report includes also some information on where we're at with monitoring staff diversity. And so what we've done in this next section is we're looking at, staff in position, and then we're also looking at turnover. And I'll explain how this works. So we're looking at page 23. These are the number of BIPOC staff members that we have by position classification this current year, and then the change over the year prior. So we keep a running record each year. And of the bracket is the group that's certificated teacher, counselor, ESA. Those are our school psychologists and SLPs, that group. So we've got 45.2% of that group identifies as a BIPOC staff member. And then that's 22.7% of the whole staff, of the district staff. And so we have seen an increase this year, and we'll get to the goal setting that HR said last year when we get to further in this slide. And then with the classified staff, same process that we went through. You can see that our classified staff, we have more staff members who identify as BIPOC, close to 70%, and that's up 2% from last year. And then our maintenance, food service and transportation, that's our SEIU unit, 66.6%. And then our school administration staff is 57.1%. School and district administration. Okay. And then next slide is where we start to monitor the turnover. And so these are the people that are leaving positions in these categories. We had 36 separations this year from the certificated unit. Okay, so that's 19% of that group separated from employment. 9.6% of the district staff, but it is just a little more than 0.5% less turnover. And so just trying to build what this all means.
And just to clarify, that's any separation, any reason for separation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
Sorry, one more clarification there. Does that include non-renewals?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then we had our 13 separations from the classified unit, which is our instructional classified unit plus our office staff, clerical staff as well, but not SEIU, not food service, not transportation. Okay, so 13 separations there. That was 11.4% of the group, 3.5% of the staff, and significantly less turnover than last year. But we have to remember, last year this is a unit that experienced the most with the RIF, with the reduction in force. Okay, so it makes sense that we had less turnover than the previous year. And then maintenance, or the SEIU unit, had 7 separations this year, which is 2% less turnover. And in the central office, we had 2. Central office and school administration, we had 2, and we had just a little bit less.
This is probably a very unfair question to ask you. She can say, or you can ask me that, you need to ask me, or I'll get it back to you. Do you have like a ballpark estimate of the difference in like baseline salary for a certificated teacher versus a classified instructional bullying program? The reason why I'm asking that question is, I look at that and I see it's an interesting and unsurprising breakdown, I think, right? That a lot of our BIPOC staff are concentrated in those lower level, that's not the right word to use. You know what I'm saying? They're classified in those non-certificated positions, right? They're less pay, less hours, often less stability. So just noting that, and then so curious on what kind of that pay difference?
Yeah, so I would say for the certificated teacher, I think the average is probably closer to $90,000 now when you look at, it could even be more than that, because we tend to, as you'll see later in the data, we have more staff members that are, more than half of our staff is on the higher end of the seniority.
Right.
So I would say maybe $100,000, what I would
But
say.
that's the general baseline, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, whereas with our classified staff, it's probably, $45,000 per year.
So we're thinking almost double the salary.
Yeah,
For that position. So one of the things that I know I talked to Dr. Pedrosa about a little bit when we, when we first were presented with the potential impacts of the MLL para decisions, was really thinking a lot about that being a kind of a stepping stone, a pathway, right, for folks who may not have been able to go to a four-year college, right, but as a stepping stone to becoming a certificated teacher. And so I think as we continue to think about, and I know that we offer some support even now within our system, but it's just seeing those numbers, it makes me think about, how can we, what additional ways can we really create pathways for those classified instructional staff to move, because I'd love to see those numbers reversed.
Yeah.
Which I know that's not, I'm not the only one in this room that feels that way. But just wanted to kind of name that and think about, more strategically as we think about retaining, engaging, retaining and supporting the development of BIPOC staff. That's something that I could see as a potential outcome of that work.
Can I jump in and say, when we've been going through a reduction cycle to get, with strategic as it was to get through our budgetary and financial issues. And a lot of people, I believe, at least from what I heard in the last year and a half, it was hard to get them, recruit them and bring them, and then we lost them because of it. Do you think there's maybe in this pitch, but do you think that's gonna come out of what felt like a nosedive for me? It was really disappointing, right? It just was. Either by just improved times getting better, or by working with the unions, or by, focusing on the needs of kids and hiring, with that focus. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel there?
Yeah.
Because otherwise we just keep shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, I think one of the strategies that we partnered with the union to develop is our recall process. Because we know that in the springtime, we may not have all the information we need, but we have statutory deadlines that we need to follow. And so we have to make decisions by May 15th, which is one. And so we may take action prior to May 15th, separate, but we now have processes where we can recall based on skills, like being multilingual, right? And so I think that's a highlight. That's a bright spot. That isn't something that necessarily existed before. That's in our labor contracts.
This is gonna be a 30-year-old culturally inappropriate statement, but the Boeing company used to have what they called toteming. And they would literally, and you'd have to work with your unions, make the employees aware who was the top 20%, who was in the middle, and who the bottom 20% were. So that it took the mystery out of it. For instance, from spring, if you were a hopeful teacher, but you were really closer evaluation wise to the bottom, they ought to be looking for jobs.
Okay.
And at Boeing, it was during times of layoff, you had a head start on looking for a job somewhere else rather than get rolled over on the wave of layoffs, which was hundreds of thousands at times, or I guess 50s of thousands at times. So I'm going from a gargantuan corporation, which does not relate to a school district, but I'm trying to say, do they have indicators? I mean, they have like their seniority, but then do we indicate whether they're highly appealing and attractive to have us want them? We badly want to retain them and have our hands are tied in the spring. Whereas others, it might be lukewarm and, without getting into legal problems, say chances are slimmer, so they have a fighting chance to find another position somewhere.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to give you one example of what our process is we have an evaluation process where the school or the principal will through the instructional observation process, they'll identify the staff member as a practice of concern. And they'll raise that with the educator. They'll let them know, like, these are the areas that we're concerned about. And, this is what we're doing to support you, but this is what needs to happen, and this is what it needs to look like. And if not, then there are options, so, yeah.
Okay.
And then on slide 25, what's happening is we just looked at our all staff turnover, and then on slide 25, we're looking at the turnover for BIPOC staff members. And so you'll see, again, going through the same pattern here, 8 of the 36 separations within the certificated teacher unit were BIPOC staff members. And so that's 22.2% of the separations in that group, and just a little less turnover than last year in this area. For classified, 5 of the 13 total separations. So again, 19.1% less BIPOC staff turnover this year than last year. And then in food service, 4 of the 7 were 5.4% less, and then 1 of the 2 administrators were BIPOC. And just a little bit less turnover. Actually, more turnover. Yeah. Okay, then we moved into seniority. So moving from turnover to where we at with seniority. And where we're going with this is we're looking at on slide 26, all district seniority, and then we move to BIPOC staff seniority. Okay, so within the 0 to 1 years of service, we have 36 staff members. And so that's an increase from last year. 2 to 5, 35, a little bit of a decrease. 6 to 10 years, 0.5% increase. And then this is what I was talking about in response to your question. We have 85 staff members, certificated staff members with 11 or more years of seniority. So that's where we get like top end on the salary schedule and such. And a little bit less staff members in that group than last year. And then with our BIPOC staff within each band for seniority, we've got 19 of our 85 0 to 1 year hires, so that's less in that group. And this is an area that we would highlight as an area of concern, right? We have less people in this first group, or in this first band, who identify as BIPOC than we did last year. So that's something that we definitely need to work towards improving.
That means we're not hiring.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
As many BIPOC staff, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
9% less, yeah, in that group than last year. Okay. And then, yeah, you can see that in the 2 to 5 year group, so we had an increase here. So I think that's a bright spot because we retained staff in this group more so this year than we did in previous years. So when we see increases in this area, I think that is a good sign. In the 6 to 10 group, we have 4.9% more in that group who identify as BIPOC, so that's a plus. And then a little bit less, 2% decrease in the 11 plus years for BIPOC.
So when you highlighted the first one as kind of an area of concern, I know that you know what I mean, any percentage amount is something we're looking into, right? And as always, but you can't fix everything, right? And so is there kind of like a general, is 2%, obviously, maybe it feels like less of a concern than the 9, kind of where are you looking at to where you're like, okay, that's something I really want to dig into a little bit more because it feels more concerning, it's like a threshold.
Yeah, and I think something that because we got curious about like what happened with like the 0 to 1 and 2 to 5. And what we saw last year was, we have the principals, the district administration have done a lot of active recruiting for BIPOC staff members and staff members who are multilingual, who are predominantly BIPOC as well. And last year with the reductions, we ended up ripping quite a few of staff members who are BIPOC. We were able to recall quite a few, but not everybody chose to return. And so I think if we put a number on it, I think, we have close to, 200, about 180 certificated staff members. So if we, say maybe 5 would be, 2 would be 1%. So yeah, 4 or 5, maybe 10% of the staff is a concern. And so that'd be like, 20 people. And so, yeah, that's quite a lot. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's close to 20 here.
I think that anytime we're talking about percentages and numbers, right, I always want to be like really clear that that's people that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I want to tend to that with care. And as I said before, like we can only prioritize and like really dig into so many things. And so, yeah, that's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. So then we set responsive goals to this data. And so what we have, and we do have some follow-ups from the goals that we set the prior year. So in August, and I'll start with our goal for next year for goal 1 here is by August 31st, we're going to demonstrate the percentage of BIPOC staff working at all 5 schools will increase by 3% is what we had named or greater. And last year, so we set a goal of 2.5%. The goal was exceeded by just a little bit more than that for all staff. We exceeded the goal with recruiting and hiring BIPOC staff in the SEIU group, and we exceeded the goal in the administration group as well. The goal was not met in the certificated staff, which we just talked about in that group, or the instructional classified group. And so that's where we want to focus with our hiring managers, with our processes. Goal 2 was focused on decreasing the turnover in the classifications by 4% or greater. We had a similar goal the year before, and we exceeded that goal. So in August of 2024, we set a goal of decreasing this percentage by 2%, and the decrease in turnover was 5.12%. And then we have a third goal. And so we are focused on the BIPOC, increasing the BIPOC certificated seniority in the 2 to 5 year service bracket by 4%. Followed up on last year's goal, we looked at the data and we saw that there was an increase in this percentage by 2%. The goal was exceeded by 4.3%. So we are focused on it. We are having conversations about it. We're talking to hiring staff when we are recruiting for positions, when we go to the job fairs. Okay. All right. And then, like I said, we have a couple of few segments in this presentation. The third is one of the strategies that we're implementing in our hiring practice. There's this masked screening process that some people call it blind screening or masked screening process that happens, where what you do is rather than showing the hiring team or the person who's screening the files all of the information on the employee, what you're covering over are the candidate's name, where they live, and their hobbies. And so what you are seeing when you're looking at the screening material are the experience, the skills, and the credentials. Language is one of the skills that we ask for as well. And so that information is seen. That's just at the screening process. And so it's an idea. We haven't tried it, and we're we want to do some practice around it this year.
This, I think, is one that's interesting to me. I know like King County uses that in their hiring process, and I think it's one of those things that like pros and cons, right? Because I mean, there might be some individuals that don't have the same experience or skills, but because of their life experience, right? And so I think there's just so much to unpack. I think it's a way to help start addressing and bring awareness to the bias that can come in based on particularly names of candidates, right? But it's just interesting. I think that's one that just like, I don't know, I'm still grappling with internally, like what that means and how to do it in a way that feels, you know, like anything, it could be biased in both directions, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of evidence though that shows the bias on the reverse end. People who are highly qualified get overlooked because of their name.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because of
For
their
sure.
name. I know that happened to me once.
Question about that. So if someone were to write a cover letter, and in their cover letter, they, you know, talked about their experience as a BIPOC person, would that get like screened out, or would that still be included as a part of their package of experience, skills, credentials?
Yeah, so there is some work that HR will need to do, and yes, the answer is yes, we are screening out. Or we are redacting some information. Before we share that information with the people on our screen, and so that would be something that we would redact. Based on being faithful to this process.
So at King County, we do believe in this to a great degree. There are flaws in any system that you put together. But there's so many scenarios of hiring, discrimination, biases, that have through, I mean, the simple one is the orchestra, where predominantly males were hired, because they would come out, they would perform, so they started having the performers play behind the screen area. Couldn't tell, and the prevalency of women being hired to orchestras went up dramatically. So that's just a small example of it, but inside, it's awkward because it's different than what we're used to.
Yeah.
But I've been on both on panels and an interviewee, and I really celebrate any way that they can take those elements out. If it's a phone call interview, at some point they may talk about through a BIPOC live experience, something happened, but that's up to the candidate to volunteer.
Do they redact information in the, like, in the, oh my God, what am I thinking? I just said the word. The cover letter?
It
I think
changes,
they did.
it changes from department to department. I'm just learning that because I just moved to another department. It's odd, the law enforcement are much more strict about keeping it neutral right now than, say, I went from KCIT over to King County Sheriff's Office. They're much more intentional about trying to neutralize information.
I think, yeah, and I think we'll continue to debate that internally, because the guidance that we have is pretty strict about you will redact, you know, this in a cover letter, or that content in a cover letter that could reveal any of these areas that you're, you know, mass screening, right? The name, the address, hobbies, all of that. You are redacting anything that's connected to that.
And I know the city of Tacoma has implemented it, and probably in ways that might be more akin to what's going on here in
Yeah.
Tacoma.
And we have school district partners that are doing something similar to this.
Yeah,
And so we're working with them as
Great.
well, turn that effective.
and then I think it's funny that we hire people, let them work 30 years and do an exit interview. But, and I saw earlier with the report us making a turn. It'd be kind of smart to just circle back maybe 3 months after onboarding, all the training and stuff they had to do to assimilate, and ask them how it went.
Yeah.
Because they might have some real direct feedback on these interviews, and obviously they got the job, right? So
Yeah.
maybe pick one or two that didn't, but
Yeah.
that may be a way to fine tune it.
I think, so we've been talking about just some general things, so. One of the things is, we've been getting some feedback too, related to some of our questions, just updating some things, so we have some equity questions.
Yeah.
Just making sure we're updating, and then, Aaron's working on some, you know, looking at reviewing protocols. He's spending some time with some equity groups, analyzing some of our procedures and processes. Because it's not just about the screening, as you all know, it's also the interview question, who's sitting around the table, and it's also how you're debriefing the information that was presented to you. And was, you know, and there's bias at all levels of the system.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that all of those pieces are accounted for, and you also have to make sure that you are mitigating as much as you can to make sure that you can't have a bias-free interview process, whatever, that just, you just can't. But you can try very hard to mitigate. So it's not just one thing, it's many things. And so, Mr. Dragonoff and I keep talking about, and so those are things that he's actively looking at and, getting some consultation on those pieces as well, because it has to be done. And I just think it's always good to refresh and review our processes.
Yeah, we wanted to share one of the strategies, but as Dr. Petrosa said, there are others that we're implementing, but this would be a new strategy. We have something we haven't incorporated yet. And so we're, like I said, we're still debating how exactly it's going to roll out, but.
Really interested to see how it goes, yeah.
Sure. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Great. All right. Any thoughts, questions, concerns that we get brought up on?
I guess the only other thing in the questions I asked about some kind of a goal for bilingual, and you're considering that.
Yes. Multilingual.
That's all.
Thank you so much. I know that it felt like a little bit of a long presentation, but it felt like an important one to have, you know, and really walk through, because this is the experience for staff that we're talking about. So thank you so much for walking us through it. All right, folks. So we'll now move to our questions only presentations. So these are the ones where our board members have the opportunity to ask some initial questions in writing, and then if there are additional questions, we can ask those here. So on the interscholastic activities and it says it. Oh, not athletic and athletic. I'm reading it right. Any additional questions on this report?
I'm curious, what is Money Smart?
I have to ask the high school staff. I don't have the exact answer. I believe it's a financial literacy activity. Because consumer math might have been in the past years.
So it's a club?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
the advisor for it is gone though, so I don't know what's gonna happen to it.
oh,
Oh, is that, Mr. Siegel?
No, Dr. Rice.
It's an interesting one because we're talking about financial literacy. If it's an active thing, it'd be interesting to explore building on that if it's still there.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, so the next is the instructional minutes, the final calendar. What additional questions do folks have here? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, great. Next we'll move on to our public rec presentation. Sorry, Chief Whitbeck, to make you get all the way up. And Aaron, for getting you back up here, but you don't have to unless anyone has additional questions.
We gotta keep Scott moving.
Yes. Thank you. And just to kind of name some of these reports are just kind of standard required legal reports that we have to, that these fine folks have to put together, and they get put before some more just kind of having some general understanding of things. So not surprising there's not a lot of additional questions here. Okay, anything on the annual report for the sexual harassment prohibited for policy 3205 and 5011?
To comment, I'll be really interested when you get the Hear Me Wah thing up and running,
Yes.
kind of whatever, however, yeah, some numbers and we're hearing and all that, so.
Just wanna thank you, sorry, just wanted to thank you for keeping like the work of the Title IX group alive. So thank you. We met really solidly for a year and then you took all those things and you kept them kind of top of mind in the work that you're doing. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I guess particularly on the Hear Me Well, particularly relevant because of the student advisory committee is kind of well plumbed into a lot of, and physical students been saying for years, the safety issues and bullying and all that is just always up there. So this is the first time, I mean, I've been trying to get this going for years and it started and stopped and, but this sounds like to say the most robust implementation of it. I mean, we had these things before, but the question, well, nobody looks at it, okay? Or the students don't know it exists, or, and so this sounds like a much, much better implementation, so it's good.
And similarly, like I'd love to hear kind of like once it gets kind of up and rolling and we're in a little bit further into the year, love to hear kind of like a update from students if they know about it, if they've used it, just kind of like how the rollout is going. And just to kind of name too, like anything we can do around kind of awareness campaigns, and get the students involved in that. I think I mentioned last time that I had attended a WASDA session on some of the school, the cell phone policies that one of the districts on the east side, and they had done this big student campaign. They created a lot of videos and were posting things on social media and like getting just all of the students familiarized with the policy. So, you know, we could think about something again like this, like how are we going to make sure that everybody knows? Because that's that felt like the hardest part. It's like there's always been a system, it just hasn't been very clear. And maybe not the best, so this might be a better system, right? But that awareness is really the first piece of them about how to use it. And if they don't trust it, they're not going to use it.
And I will say, just so everybody's aware, at the Washington Annual Conference this year, the pre-conference sessions, there's a new one this year. It's going to be on student voice and how to implement student voice in school districts. So I don't know that one. It's one of those, anytime you see a new one, it probably fills up really fast. So unless we get some people in there, it could be gone by the time we get to it.
Alrighty, well, this brings us to our action item portion of the agenda. So if I could get a motion to approve the human resources staffing report.
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Just want to say to Lita, retirement after starting in 1997. Congratulations on your retirement. You deserve it. I hope you're going to do something awesome and fun. All right, all in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Next is the approval of the 2025 to 2029 SEIU 925 labor agreement.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any additional questions or comments here?
I just want to make a comment that, first of all, the increases here are above what the state pays and they're definitely well deserved. The question, unfortunately, I just keep pointing out that the state is underfunding us continuously. And this is another example, and this is the extra money and the extra positions are going to have to be pulled from our local levy dollars, which don't go up as fast. So, it's more fuel to the state to actually start funding what these things really cost. Because, but definitely a well-deserved raise, so.
And just compliments to all sides for coming together and finding common ground to bring this to agreement. And the union support the agreement. It's not easy.
All right, all in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was aye to everyone. Next is the approval of policy number 3245, which is the student telecommunication devices. So this is the approval of with the changes that we looked at earlier. Can I get a motion?
I move to
Oh,
accept.
sorry. One second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So now we are to our final opportunity for public comments. So if there's anyone, either joining us online or in person, would like to offer public comment, you can do so by raising that virtual hand. If there's anyone in person, just walk up and sign this after. I'll give you just a moment. Okay, seeing none, we are now, move to our executive session, which is to review the performance of a public employee for RCW 42.30.110G. We're gonna be in that executive session, I'm gonna stay for an hour, so we will return back at 8:30. And then we'll just, move to adjourn after that time. So at this time, I'm gonna ask everyone joining us online to go ahead and remove themselves from the Zoom meeting. And anyone in person, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. It's time for me to take my leave.
All right, it is 8:33 and we are back from our executive session. So if I could get a motion to now adjourn our meeting. All in favor? Aye. Thanks so much.